Have you ever had a day like this? You felt fine in the morning? Then around lunchtime, someone made one comment and suddenly your whole mood shifted. Two people can hear the same words and react very differently. One person shakes them off and moves on. Another stays caught in them for the rest of the day. At times like that, we often say, this is just how I am. But is that really true? Is the mind that feels shaken today really all of me? First, we need to separate two things. One is the familiar arrangement of the mind that has formed over many years. The other is the fluctuation happening right now in response to a particular event. The baseline egogram, which we looked at in part 0, is a blueprint of the mind patterns I have used over time. It carries traces of the environments I have lived through. It reflects the ways I learned to endure. It also shows what I have become especially sensitive to. This baseline does not form overnight. Experiences accumulate. Similar reactions repeat. Little by little, familiar pathways form in the mind. But what happens in this moment does not always match that blueprint. One unexpected criticism can shake us. A brief silence can make the mind freeze. On the other hand, one warm word of recognition can help a withdrawn part of us open again. Even the same person can respond very differently when the situation changes. Here we need one useful term, emotional weather. Emotional weather is what happens when an outside event passes through my mind and becomes a particular felt experience in the present moment. The event happens outside, but the weather is felt inside. That is why the same words can sound different to different people. The same expression can feel different. Even the same silence can be experienced in completely different ways. For one person, it passes like a light breeze. For another, it feels like a sudden downpour. For someone else, it may arrive like a powerful gust that shakes everything. Why does this happen? Because we do not take in reality without interpretation. We experience it through the familiar filters of our own mind. Imagine that someone suddenly stops talking. One person may think maybe they're tired. Another may think, did I do something wrong? The silence is the same. The weather inside is different. Now imagine that someone points out a mistake. One person may think that's useful feedback. Another may feel they're attacking me. Again, the situation may be similar, but the inner translation is different. When CP tends to come forward quickly, another person's mistake may immediately trigger the thought, this needs to be corrected. In contrast, when AC becomes highly sensitive, even a small change in someone's expression may lead to, did I do something wrong? From the outside, the situation may not look very different. Inside, however, the weather can be completely different. So observing emotional weather is not only about asking, what happened? There's another question we need to ask. What kind of weather did that event become inside me? When we can ask that question, we are less likely to mistake today's fluctuation for our whole identity. When we were children, we were a lot like small sprouts. The weather outside could feel enormous. One facial expression might feel frightening. One brief silence might feel like abandonment. Why? Because A was still developing. A helps us think, organize, and look calmly at what is happening. It helps us separate what we feel from what actually happened. In childhood, that capacity is still limited. So, to get through difficult situations, we may strengthen some parts of the mind and hide others. As those patterns repeat, a familiar inner arrangement begins to form. But today, we are no longer only the sprouts we once were. We are more like trees that have passed through many seasons. We have known rain. We have endured frost. We have also grown again in sunlight. That does not mean we never get shaken. A sudden comment can still make us pull back. An unfamiliar expression can wake up an old tension. But this is the important point. That fluctuation is not all of me. I can observe what is happening. I can give it a name. And little by little, I can tune the way I respond. In part 1, we look at momentary reactions for a reason. The goal is not to become more sensitive to every emotional shift. The goal is to become less controlled by those shifts. When I can recognize the kind of weather I'm moving through, I begin to have more choices about what happens next. I can notice that I am simply standing in the rain. I can notice that I am being hit by a strong gust. I can also notice when I am treating a brief shower as if it were a major disaster. This is where A becomes important again. A does not remove emotion. its first role is to distinguish what happened. How did I experience it? What is becoming overheated inside me? What is beginning to pull back or shut down? Once I can make those distinctions, the fluctuation is no longer just a vague storm. It becomes a signal I can read. The point of this section is simple. Personality is not a solid block of stone that never changes. There is a long established arrangement underneath. At the same time, there are present waves that rise and fall with today's emotional weather. So when I feel shaken, I do not have to immediately say, this is who I really am. I can ask different questions. What kind of weather is moving through me right now? Which part of the mind came forward first? What am I experiencing as bigger than the facts? What kind of tuning might help me now? Torbit TA is not trying to correct who I am. It is about learning to read the engine of my mind more precisely. The goal is not to become someone who never gets shaken by difficult weather. The goal is to notice what is moving inside me while I'm going through that weather. And then, from there, I can tune again. At that point, I do more than simply fear the wind and rain. I begin to recognize the sound of my own mind's engine. I begin to read fluctuation as a signal rather than as a defect. Please remember this one sentence. Today's weather is not all of me. Today's fluctuation is not evidence that I am broken. It is a signal my mind is sending right now. We can read that signal and we can tune again.